little kids, big kids, teenage kids. See, the one thing we've always got going for us is that at some point they're going to grow out of this challenging phase. But then your kids become an adult. And for the rest of your life, your children will be an adult.
Let's get into that. Hey, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you're joining us for Family Friday on Marriage by Design. Family Friday is a time where we get to talk about God's design for families and parenting and what the Bible has to say about it and how we do parenting. And today we're joined by some of our friends, Mark and Jean King.
Yeah, so Mark and Jean go to the same church we go to. We got connected with them because they have a real heart for young married couples that are moving towards marriage. And so when we first got connected with you guys, years ago now, they ended up eventually taking over all the premarital curriculum and kind of meeting with couples that are wanting to get married through our church and have done an amazing job with it. And so, as we've gone through this month and talked about stages of parenting, we have young children. I do not have any adult children. I have the children that belong to those legs that are poking out.
Lincoln's joining us again this week because
right.
yet again he doesn't want to go to sleep.
Right. Good times. See the first video about 0 to 5-year-old kids. So we wanted to have a couple that we thought, man, as Andrea and I look at who do we want to parent our children when they're adults, who would we want to emulate? And Mark and Jean certainly came to mind for us. So thanks, guys, so much for joining us. So appreciate you being here. So as we kick off, maybe start by telling us a little bit about your family and what you do and kind of set the stage, and we'll just go back and forth from there.
All right. Yeah. First of all, we've been married as of June 2nd, 36 years.
Hey.
So flying by. And from that marriage, we produced 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
So first, we have Christina, who is 32. We have Michael, who's 30, actually just turning 30 on July 31st.
Hey.
Mm-hmm.
And Katie, who is 28. So, yeah, we had that 2-year plan thing.
That's right. That's right. Hey, it worked.
And it did work. So, we go to Love Church. We've probably been going to Love Church, I think we figured between 7 and 8 years now.
That's great.
And we both work. I'm actually in the insurance business. I've been kind of running my own agency for about 13 years. And Jean, I'll let you tell what you do.
Well, I'm a teacher, and God really called me into teaching, and then this last year I resigned from public teaching and now going into a new atmosphere. I guess. So I'm excited about it.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
That's great.
We left out the other part of our children too, that they're all 3 married.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And we have then 2 wonderful son-in-laws and a daughter-in-law, and 3 precious grandbabies.
That's awesome.
So,
yes. So don't let me forget. We must talk about what it's like to parent through the marriage piece. Because that's something I'll forget because that's so far out of my frame of reference right now. I can't.
So in essence, it did double. Yeah, now we have 6 kids and 3 grandkids.
Awesome.
So.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. That's great. So one question we've started off with each episode of this series is, as you think about parenting adult children generally, what comes to mind? As far as what do you think about as you've gone through now, parenting your kids through adulthood?
Well, you want to start on that?
it's an awesome stage.
It's the best stage.
It really is. I mean, you put in a lot of hard work as parents when they're young through those stages. And I feel like now you finally just, you just almost like sit back and just enjoy it and just enjoy having them. And for the first time, we're now friends with them, whereas before when you're parenting, you can't be their
Yes.
friends.
Sure.
You have to be their parent.
Right.
Sure.
And now we really just we just enjoy a friendship
Yeah.
with them.
I mean, it's not uncommon for them to, call us on a, Thursday around dinner time and say, hey, are you guys hanging around tonight? We go, yeah. And they go, well, can we come over and fire pit?
That's
And
so
can we
great.
come over and hang out with you?
Yeah.
And it's cool. I mean, yeah, it's 20 years ago, I don't know if I would have envisioned
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
What an honor that your kids want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that speaks a lot to your parenting and to, your parenting through the stages.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you, and I know this is specifically about parenting adult children, but is there anything you look back on in your earlier stages of parenting that you feel like you really did well to set up parenting them for adulthood? Does that question make sense?
It makes sense. I mean, the most important thing is leading them down the correct spiritual path.
Yeah.
Leading them on that spiritual journey.
Sure.
Leading by example, making sure we all went to church as a family. They had, making sure that they saw us being in the Word,
Sure.
being involved in small groups. I mean, we've been involved in other churches we were in.
Mm-hmm.
We're involved
Sure.
in small groups. Another thing she was real big on was even during the craziness of, because all three of our kids were in sports, so
Mhm.
there was that time when all three of them were there, and it's like, okay, who's going to soccer practice, who's going to baseball,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
But as often as we could, she was always a big stickler on this. We always made sure we had dinner together as a
That's
family
great. That's really good.
with no TV on.
Mhm.
And again, it was just kind of the beginning of the whole cell phone thing back then, when
Sure.
we were raising our kids, but still no phones, no TV on.
That's
It was
great.
just a time we could just kind of reflect and take a deep breath and what's going on.
That's great.
So
Yeah, that's awesome. Very good. So, with that, then, what would you say have been some of the challenges of parenting adult children? And not trying to out anybody specifically, but just generally, what are things you've thought, man, I wouldn't have expected this to be as difficult as it was, or I didn't expect this at all, or what would you think there?
okay. Technically, when we talk about adult children, I think it starts, Todd and Denise were here and they're talking about their boys and how what does he say? He's getting ready to shoot them off. That's it, launch them off, right?
Mhm.
Well, that's technically, they call that's the start of the adult children phase or the consulting phase.
Sure.
But that launching them off into college was probably the most difficult aspect of it. And she's going to touch on some of her emotional feelings that she went through with it. In fact, I would even say that that's technically not even a consultant stage yet,
Still
because they're still
parenting.
knuckleheads, even though they're going off on their own.
They're still on your dime, probably.
Yes.
And they're still on your
Yes.
dime.
Right.
Yeah, big time on your dime. In fact,
That's
I'd
right.
say it's probably more like a $10 bill as opposed
Yeah,
to
right?
off in the college. But so you still have responsibility for them, but yet they're going off, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's not really I'd almost say that's what would be between a coach and a consultant. I mean, like an agent, maybe.
Sure.
I
It's
don't know.
the agent. It's the agent.
The
phase.
agent phase, yeah.
That's
So
right.
it's
That's right.
but there's still a lot of coaching involved. It's just
Right.
that we don't see them every day,
Sure.
right?
Yep. Yep.
They're
sure.
not coming home after school or coming home after practice.
Right.
These stars were, they two went to Wayne State and one went to Kearney, so
Yep. Yep.
they, were gone.
Right.
Was it a challenge when they were gone? They had kind of their own rules for their life, doing their own thing. But then when they came back during breaks,
Mhm.
then they're under your roof, your rules. Is that
Yes.
challenging? How do you handle that?
Yes, that was challenging
Yeah.
because again, they were all in sports, so they had. When they were there, they were involved not only during the week, but they were involved during the weekend.
Mhm.
So literally, they would go, and other than us maybe go, like Christina played soccer, so that was a fall sport. So we would see her, maybe every other weekend. But other than that, they did not come home except for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then maybe spring break. So yeah, when they came back, I mean, it was a social adjustment.
Yes.
Mhm. Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
It would be.
They all of a
Sure.
sudden had to revert back to the King family home rules.
Mhm.
Yes, which
As
I'm sure
opposed
is
to
not
the
always
living in the
thrilling.
dorm rules.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So, Gene, maybe talk a little bit about emotionally what
Mhm.
that was like.
Yeah. It was probably the hardest stage for me to move into.
Mm-hmm.
I remember with our last daughter, everybody asked, "So, aren't you looking forward to the empty nest?" Empty nest. And I just got to a point, I think emotionally, where I just couldn't handle that question anymore, you know, because there was so many. I mean, yes, of course, it's what's God planned. You know, they need to go and be successful on their own and stand up on their own.
Sure.
But me as a mom, I guess I almost felt like my role is done, you know,
Mhm.
and I just needed to come to grips with, I'm still a mom. And even though they're not going to be in the house now as much, you know, I might, like he said, you know, you might go several weeks without seeing them.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not preparing a meal for them and taking care of things like that on a daily basis, you know, I'm still a mom. So there was a lot of emotional things that I needed to work through. I mean, I think it was even a mourning process, you know, of them leaving the house, and then realizing that, yeah, it's going to be okay. They're still here. And once I worked through that, it was wonderful. But I will say that I'm also kind of a person of routine. So like I would just get used to them being gone. And like he'd say, they'd come back and all the dirty laundry would come back.
Yeah.
And all the dirty dishes
Sure.
and there's no food in the house. And,
Right.
you know, and so it was kind of those college years. It's a difficult age because, and again, you know, I think in our case, there was a lot of spiritual attacks that happened to our children during that stage. They fell away,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
from the Lord,
Yeah.
and from being involved in a church or being involved in a Bible study, and affected by, you know, the culture so much and the atmosphere on the campus, and and really just attacked mainly with dating. There's significant others, and there was some real relationship things that happened there with all three of them that we really just felt like Satan was attacking, and that unequally yoked scenario with, you know, marriage and that.
Yep.
So there was some real dicey moments where, again, we really had to pray a lot and then ask for guidance from the Holy Spirit to speak to them, because again, they're wanting to make those choices on their own.
Sure.
And not realizing how those choices are so impactful for a
Right.
lifetime.
Sure.
A lifetime.
Sure. Yeah, so you mentioned two things there that I want to ask you a follow-up question on, because I'm willing to bet that there's somebody that's watching that is really struggling themselves with an identity situation where the kids are gone, right? Or maybe even they're in high school, but they're older upperclassmen and they're still gone, right?
Right.
They're off doing their thing, they're mobile, they've got cars, they're gone. And so what advice would you give to a mom or a dad, both of you, if you would, on how to deal with that identity crisis that can come up when your kids are growing up?
Well, first of all, I can say I wasn't near as emotionally upset as she was. I was kind of like, especially when my youngest went away. She was a bit of
A harder one.
We love you, Katie, but yeah, she was a bit of a fighter. Yeah.
Sure,
and
sure.
When we drove her off to Kearney and dropped her off, and I just kind of went, I think I put my fist, arm out the window and went, yes.
My mom says she did a dance in the parking lot.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So,
Because you were also a child.
and I think
Yes.
you were probably ready for it too once you kind of got over
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I think, and I guess going back to the question was dealing with that feeling, right?
Yeah. What advice would you give?
I think really, too, it was a difficult time in our marriage because we did feel so differently.
Yep.
And we have known enough people that have gone through this stage and
They get divorced.
and they get
Yeah.
divorced. Their marriage ends because they kind of
Mhm.
look at each other and it's just the two of you and you go, now what?
Yeah.
You know?
What do we do? We don't have any place to go. We don't have
Yep.
anybody to
Right.
Yep.
cheer for.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
So
Yep.
I
Yep.
think most importantly, you know, obviously keeping that priority. So God first and then your marriage.
Yeah.
And when you're in the scuttle of, you know, games and practice and this and that and dance and, you know, it's easy to put the marriage on the back burner.
Yeah.
But thankfully, at that point in our life, you know, Christ was the center of our marriage.
Mhm.
And our marriage was strong.
Yep.
And we came out of it okay,
Yep.
obviously, and then, you know, grew closer together and realized that, you know, I mean, again, this is good. This is
Yeah.
good for our marriage because now we have time to reinvest into each other
Yeah.
and spend time together. And I think it too, I mean, now, you know, once the kids got out of the college age, more or less our kids got married shortly after college.
Yeah.
And they look to us now. I think they look at our marriage really the most. We're modeling to them now
that's
as
great.
being young married couples. We're modeling that
Yeah, you
in our
bet.
marriage.
You bet.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good. If you're watching this video and you might be going, okay, I have a 5-month-old, right, or I have a 2-year-old. So you know, what do I take away from this other than bookmark it and watch it again in 15 years?
It'll go quick.
That's right.
Goes quick.
But I think that point's a really important one. It's so easy for your marriage to start becoming a joint operation about raising kids
Yeah.
and not about each other. And that's so dangerous. So don't, you know, if you're watching this and you're going, man, I don't have adult kids, do yourself a favor and make sure your marriage is a priority right now. Because when you do have adult kids, you don't want to look across the table at your spouse and go, oh, I don't
know who you are. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a good call.
Mm-hmm.
Good call. Okay, the second question I was going to ask is and Gene, I'll start with you. For the mom that's watching and says, hey, my kids are in college, maybe they're even older than that, and we tried to do everything we could to raise them knowing what's right and what's not, and they're choosing to go off here and do something that they know we disagree with, that is wrong, but they're choosing that. How do you deal with that as a mom, right? And then or maybe you could speak into as a father too, right? How do you process that? How do you ultimately turn that over to the Lord and not feel like, man, I've screwed everything up?
Right. Yeah, I think what we had to do, and we had, you know, situations that maybe teetered on right on that. It could have went either way, you know. And again, first of all, going to the Lord and praying and praying and praying, and He will. I mean, if you seek, He provides, right? And I can remember one time we were kind of in a crisis, and you know, people just started randomly reaching out to me, and all I could say is, can you pray? Can you pray? And so right away we had, you know, other people praying into it too. You know, all we had to do was we sat down, and again, you have to be on the same page as a couple with your child. I think at any stage, right? I mean, you know, parenting, you have to be on the same page. So we had to sit down together and talk about it, and then just set them down, and again, just model that, you know, through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
You know, this is what we want for your life. And some of it in that early stages, you know, they don't know what they don't know. You know, I mean, they're thinking, you know, I'm in love. This is going to be great. You know, we're going to go, you know, do this. And, you know, we had to sit back as parents and just say, hey, you know, can we share some of our wisdom of what we've seen? And can we say, this is what it could look like. This is what could happen if you make this choice. And then we had to say, you go ahead and go back to your college campus, your college classes, your apartment, and make a decision. and realizing it's free will, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all free will. And we've had to sit back too and kind of realize that, hey, let's remember when we were 20 and the things that we did and the mistakes that we made.
Sure.
And we call it tuition, I mean,
The price of tuition.
you learn.
Right.
You learn
Right.
from those.
Right.
And some of that too, we had to realize that, hey, they're learning and God has them on a path right now.
Yeah.
And
That's
he's
good.
teaching them and he's training them. And we did the same knucklehead things and we learned from them too as we went.
Yeah, that's a
And
really good perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Mark, anything you'd add on that?
Yeah, it's just another thing too is just really staying in communication with them. Again, all three of them, I think, just kind of the way we raised them, I think they ultimately what kept them from probably doing, going off some cliffs here and there was I think they didn't want to disappoint us.
Mm.
It's just that I just think we raised them in love, and we I think maybe Denise used this term too. I always called it the guardrails.
Sure.
Remember when you take your little kids bowling to the bowling alley, and
Yeah.
it's the ball. You got to let them bounce off
Yeah.
the guardrails here and there.
guardrails,
And
sure.
we let them do that in high school. Then in college, you kind of have to really let them go. But
Yep.
I mean, I would just, with all three of them, I would just ask them, what are you doing? Do you have, who you hanging out with?
Yep.
I mean, I didn't specifically ask them, well, what parties you going to? But I mean,
Sure. Sure.
they're socializing,
Sure.
right? Especially, the kids on their track team or whatever, things like that. So
Right.
I always kind of told them, I said, if you feel that you're in a jam or if you're uncomfortable with something, you can always talk to me, right?
Yeah.
You always can. And you know what? There were certain times that all three of them, they would call me.
Yeah, that's great.
They would call me. Unfortunately, though, when I saw the phone ring and I saw it was one of their names, I usually knew it wasn't say, "Hey, Dad, how you doing?"
Yeah.
Just thinking of you.
Yeah, just thinking about you, Dad.
Right.
But you know what? I was very grateful that, hey, at least they can pick up this phone and they can call me and they can ask for advice.
It's great.
So
Yep. Yeah, totally. Totally. So let's see. I had a question. It was a good one too. It was an amazing question.
Oh no.
and it fluttered away.
And it fluttered away. So, tell me then about having kids that are married, right? How does that change the way you parent? How does that change your relationship with your kids? How did you guys think about that as a couple, right? When your kids got married, bring us in on that.
This is so much more fun. You got them through college.
Sure.
You got everything paid for. They go out on their own, and you get a pay raise, right?
That's
Oh,
right.
another thing I should say too. Another rule that again, as a married couple, you always need to be on. Obviously, all through this whole thing, but you always need to be on the same wavelength, the same
You bet.
path, right? And one thing that we discussed when they were in college, and we agreed on that was when they were done with college. And for you people who maybe your kids go to trade school or maybe they go somewhere else, but once they were done with that stage, our rule is you could come live back with us, and you had until September 1st to
3-4 months.
Yeah, 3-4 months to kind of get the bearings and figure things out, find a job, and then you're on your own. You're out.
Yeah, it's great.
Period.
It's
Well,
great.
I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And
Yeah.
we stuck to it, and they understood it, and they knew
That's
it.
great.
And our oldest daughter was a little bit afraid about it. Actually, she didn't even have a full-time job at the time because she had a teaching degree, and she graduated late, so it was kind of in between. And
Sure.
But you know what? She figured other things out to do. I worked with all of them on their budget and said, here's what you need to live on, right? This is I'm big into budgeting.
Yep.
And she looked at that and she goes, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, I can do that, Dad.
Good.
And again, it was a little bit. She's a little bit apprehensive, but to this day, she still thanks us for doing that. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a good year for her.
Yep,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
it was. So it gives anything. It gives them confidence that hey, I can do this.
Yep.
I can do this.
So by September 1st of that year, they were
Oh yeah.
on their own.
They were they graduate from college. They're done. First week of May or whatever.
Right.
So,
Yep.
and Christina was she's put it to the end. Our son, he goes, I'm out of here now, man.
That's
Like he left in July or it's like June or July.
It's funny.
Oh, that's great.
And then our youngest got married right. So
Okay.
Okay.
and she was engaged during college.
Okay.
So
Okay.
but
So when your kids got married, was that hard? What were the challenges with them getting married and now being responsible either to somebody else, for
Yeah.
your girls, or responsible for somebody else? Tell us about that.
I mean, God is so amazingly merciful and kind and good. And I mean, each one of their spouses, I mean, again, it was just a perfect match for them.
That's
And,
great.
I mean, just God-centered marriages.
believers,
And
equally
so,
yoked. Yeah.
really, again, it was just us coming alongside and supporting in any way that we can, and really hands off.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole leave and cleave,
Yep.
we felt strongly about that. There was a couple of times that actually I got a phone call from two of the son-in-laws, and just something had happened, and wanting to get my opinion. And I just said, I can tell you that this is what I know about my daughter and their personalities and that. And I prayed with them. And I said, just go and pray and sit down and talk.
Figure it out. That's
So
great.
it's just, again, we just kind of always come alongside and support. And I think, like you said, they watch us and watch our marriage. And, really it's just, again, we just kind of said, you need to go talk to them about that. And
So largely staying out of.
right.
Yeah, we really make a point of just pretty much staying out
Yeah.
of their business.
Yep.
And believe me, there's some things we see and we kind of go,
Yeah.
we keep our mouths shut.
Yeah.
Something my parents did, which was great, is they said, we are never your place to come if you're mad at your husband and you're getting away from him.
Yeah.
Like, don't come here.
Yeah. That's good.
You need to
Yeah, that's a
work
great
it out
point.
with him and work through that, but you should be running away from the problems in your marriage. So if you're running away, you're not welcome here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So how do you, as parents, decide? Because I can imagine watching now they're doing their family and in some cases raising your grandchildren, their children, and I would imagine there are probably plenty of times where you go, well, that's not really how I would do that, or man, I don't really know if I would do it that way. How do you parse between opportunities to maybe consult with them on some concerns maybe you see versus going, okay, I can't, that's their thing, I need to not be a part of that? How do you think about that?
I tell you, again, they know our role as consultants.
Sure.
And they have all, even our son-in-laws have used us for that matter too.
That's
but
great. Yep.
I don't know, we
I
very
think
rarely ever
you've been
make an unsolicited comment.
You've been quoting a lot of love and respect, which made me, even before, we've talked about this before, that different doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And their family and their children and their marriage is different than ours.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't make it wrong.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
So a lot of times when we have a situation like that, we just look at it and we said, is this a sin issue?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this just a
Difference.
That's
issue?
Sure. That's really good.
And and then just praying through that and just realizing that, hey, it's just different and it looks different for their family.
Yep.
And it's working for them, and that's the way they're going to make their marriage work or raise their children or whatever it is. And grandparenting, again, I think it's just the ultimate reward to parenting, because you just play and you have fun and you give them candy and cookies and then you send them home.
It's like so little responsibility. Yeah.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah, that's good. You're really good. That's fun. That's great. I would say so Andrew and I are married. So as her husband,
hope so.
with what her parents said to her, that I would say that's one of the biggest gifts you can give your married children is not being opinionated about everything that goes on.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that's incredibly difficult
Yeah.
to do. But it's, I mean, how many times do we sit down with couples and you start talking to them, and I'm sitting here hearing a couple argue, but really all I'm hearing is his mom and her mom arguing through the two of them.
It's really, a wedge in so many marriages
Yeah.
with
Right.
the parents' opinions and the parents really getting involved, and it's really becomes a wedge in that marriage.
I
Yeah.
can see that. We were lucky because really both of our parents were cool about that. Really,
Yeah.
both sets of them just
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of let us go.
Wow.
So I
We
maybe
have it
that was
way.
modeled to us, I guess, strongly. So it
Yeah.
it helped us. So
We
Yeah.
had,
Our
we
kids.
had it that way too, and we don't understand. I know the gift that we have. In
Yeah.
that.
And I would even go a step further to say, if you're struggling with that because you're afraid you're going to lose your kids, you're way more likely to lose them if you have an opinion about everything than if you let them figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
Right? You're way more likely to be in a position where they call you and say, "Hey, Dad, what do you think about this thing that's going on?" than if every time you get together you've got opinions on stuff that's going on. It really throws it.
if that happened, I think there'd be less and less times they actually would get together. With
Right. Yeah, I think that's
And
absolutely
probably
right.
reality.
I think that's right. So, Gene, I see you have some scripture written down. So, were there, or either now or as you know, when your kids were in college, were there certain verses that stood out to you as this is timely for parenting adult children?
Well, I did write down a few. I think the strongest one that we both kind of agreed on was, again, it's a fairly common one, but Proverbs 26 or 22:6. Direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it.
That's great.
You know, and that, you know, I mean, again, that speaks to all that hard work that you do in all those other stages.
Yep.
And, you know, maybe just the guardrails during the college years and the coaching there. And then after that, you know, I mean, and again, we talked about it, the free will issue. I mean, we also know parents that did everything perfectly right. And their child chose, you know, a different path and to walk away from the Lord. And, you know, God is still working in that. I mean, you know, if I can speak an encouragement into that, I mean, God is working in that, and you just never know what He is going to do in that time. And, you know, it may take 10 years, it might take 20, it might take 30.
Because they know truth. So there's never not going to be that inner battle, even though they might not show it. There's never going to be there's not going to be a time where there's not that inner battle of, I know truth, I'm not choosing truth.
Right.
There has to be, because it was planted in them, you know, for kids who were raised in that.
Right.
That truth is always there.
Right.
It just may lay dormant for a little while.
Right.
So
That's right.
Right. So just two other questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So first one is, you know, we've asked each different stage of parenting. We've talked about, okay, what are things that you do in this stage, in the 0 to 5 stage, to prepare your kids for the 6 to 12 stage, right? So for you guys, what are things that you do now with your adult children where maybe you're preparing them for parenting themselves, or preparing them for, you know, being an older adult, or, you know, what are the kinds of things that you do now that you're mindful of to kind of prepare them for, you know, hey, the next hopefully 60, 70 years of their life?
wow, that's
Yeah, well, I think I can just give an example. Just like this weekend, I mean, we are blessed to have a place that has been in my family for 50 years. And so there is 4 generations that come together at the lake together, and we spend time with my parents and us and our children and our grandchildren all together
Yeah,
for
we
the
had 4
entire
generations
weekend.
That's
this weekend.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
That's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's right.
It is, because we're having fun and we're enjoying each other.
Yep.
But yet, you know what? We were sitting out on the lake and we were floating on the rafts and we were talking about spiritual things. And we were talking about, hey, I heard this message and this and scripture and, and just those conversations just flow naturally, as you spend time together. And, there was, I don't know if Mom was down there yet, but, 4 generations right there
That's
sharing
amazing.
all of that at the same time. So again, I think those things are just they just happen, kind of like where, again, my kids are seeing my parents, in their 80s and, how they're staying active and staying busy and staying engaged and, I think they're busier than us most of the time.
Wow.
Quite possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and they're seeing that. They're
That's
seeing
good.
that. So I think that's probably about the best example that I can
That's
give.
great.
Really.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think too, our kids see us. We go out quite a bit, and like during the winter, we like to go dancing, and so sometimes our kids laugh too. And I know, in fact, my son-in-law said he goes, man, you guys have like more fun than we do. That's like, I go, yeah, it's like a great stage of life.
Yeah.
So I mean,
right?
you just show them again that
Yeah, that's so good.
it's just you keep it going.
Yeah.
You keep it going. So
That's so good. That's great.
Good for you guys.
That's great.
I didn't know that about you.
oh yeah, she's a big dancer.
What kind of dancing?
Any kind of dancing.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's
We
awesome. That's
love
great.
70s music. Yeah,
Yep. We love
there's some places in town that have some good, bands that play
Yeah.
70s and 80s. Yeah.
Oh man, that's great.
Shout out to Soul Dog. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Good
Nice. That's good. That's good. It's great.
I think the last question,
Yep. It's your
right,
question.
was what do you really cherish the most from this stage?
Knowing that, Lord willing, you're at the young part of this
Right.
adulthood stage, but so far,
Yeah.
what have you cherished? I think we can rule out college,
Yeah.
but outside of that, what have you really cherished so far?
I can just say this is the best. I mean, every stage is great, right? Every stage you guys are in. It's a great stage.
Sure.
It is, but this is just really cool. Because Lord, I mean, we've been blessed. We have our health. I still feel young.
Yeah.
We joke we have nothing alive in our house. Nothing. So we could just
Good
cut.
for you.
When we just want to go,
So
we
you
just
can
go.
go.
Just go.
Yeah.
Right. That's great.
That's my
That's
idea
funny.
of being
Yeah.
kidless too.
Yeah, that's right.
But yet we
Just go.
have our adult kids or our friends. We have the
Yep.
grandkids. It's just
That's what I would
Yeah.
say is we cherish just the depth that we have in our relationship with our children now. And I think, my youngest daughter has said it best because we have been through so much together, and that integrity and that trust has been developed over so many years that she just knows that we've got your back.
Yeah,
Mom, I need you to pray. Okay, I'm praying.
right.
Mom, it's a bad day. I'm going to bring you a Starbucks. They just know that we have their back. And so that relationship is just so deep. And I think that's what I cherish so much now about this stage.
That's a great point. Yeah, depth is good. You're never as deep with your kids as when, let's be honest, when they're adults and you're an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's when you can really get emotionally deep with them, and they're not uncomfortable being emotionally deep with you or emotionally deep with you.
That's
So
great. That's great.
I had Carla, my mentor and our friends, tell us a few years ago that now that they have two children, and now that they have adult children, they wish they would have had more. Because they just love the relationships that they have with their adult children.
Yeah.
well, they can adopt you guys.
Well, they have.
Yeah,
in a lot of
that's
ways.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. They have. That's
They
right.
adopted a lot
That's
of
easy
people
way
in
to
a lot
do
of
it.
ways.
No, that's good. Thanks for sharing that, guys. Thanks so much for being transparent about your relationship with your kids. It struck me as you were talking about that. There's got to be somebody at some point that watches this and goes, man, it seems like you guys really did a good job the first 20 years raising your kids. I didn't, and I don't have that relationship with my adult kids. And I feel like I just want to tell you the thing about adult children is it's not a 0 to 5. It's not a 5-year window and then you blew it, right? I mean, your kids are adults. So, man, start pursuing that relationship now, and maybe start by just going to them and admitting, hey, I wish I'd have done things differently when you were younger. I didn't. I'm sorry about that, but I want a relationship, a meaningful relationship with you right now. There's no reason to, cut off the next 30 years of your life because you didn't do things the way you wish you would have when your kids were 10 or 11, 12 or whatever. So, man, I'd encourage that.
Yeah, and again, to kind of couple on top of that, because we didn't talk about the other stage, but it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows for us.
That's
here.
good.
So
That's good.
There was some rough times.
That's good.
Made
Oh, good.
mistakes.
I needed to hear that today because it's been a rough day.
Yeah.
That's
So,
right. No, that's good. Thanks. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Guys, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you.
Yep, that was great. Okay, so here's what we got going the rest of the week. We've got the diary tomorrow. Then next week
This weekend.
this weekend. Sorry. Then next week we've got the final in our Love and Respect series on Monday, and then Tuesday I finish up talking about. So you've come through an affair and you're putting your marriage back together. What does that look like? So guys, if you've been through that, or girls, but guys, if you've been through that, I'd love to have you check that out. Then Wednesday, Andrea is going to do a top 5.
Yep.
It is a 5th Wednesday on Women Power Wednesday, so she's going to do a top 5. So come back on Wednesday to see what that's all about. Thursday, we'll finish up talking about Matthew 19. And then Friday, we're going to do top 5 cringeworthy moments we have had as parents. So if you're
Got some
into
good ones.
stories that make your skin crawl, you're going to want to check that out a week from today.
They're
Thanks,
not that
guys.
bad.
No, they're not, but they're cringeworthy and gross. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, God's for your family.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.